Out of this world. Yes, that is the series that we're in right now, and today we are ending that series. I'm excited to get the opportunity to wrap that up with you. How many of you having a great summer? Yes. Awesome. Loving the AC. Yep, absolutely. Me too. Getting plenty of beach time. Hey, I just come off of a couple weeks break, man. I'm like jacked up excited about what's going on. And I got a really cool out of this world story to tell you. But before I tell you that, I need to kind of give you this thing to be thinking about just a little bit. So everybody in the room, everybody watching online, see if you can answer this question. What is the difference between peaceful and peace? Yeah, I know. I get that every service. Yeah, all week I've been asking that, and I've yet to find anybody who can really answer. So what is the difference between peaceful and peace? Let me tell you a story. This is something I've never told anybody except for the 9 o'clock crowd. This is something that happened back in 2009. I say it's something that happened. It was a dream that I had. 2009 for me and my wife was a crazy year. We have aptly dubbed it the best, worst year of our life. Because naturally it was horrible. It was just absolutely a terrible year in every natural way imaginable. But supernaturally, it was the best year of our life. Like us, me and Susan and us and God, man, we were clicking. I mean, if there is an opportunity where you can literally walk with 1 foot in heaven and 1 foot on earth, that's how I would describe 2009. It was crazy. It was this crazy paradox, right? Because in the natural, it was just terrible. And it was hard, and it was just every morning you woke up, you're like, man, what next? But then supernaturally, God was just doing all this kind of crazy stuff in our life, including this dream that I had. I had lots of dreams that year, and I would journal them down and write them down. And so I had this dream I want to share with you because it kind of goes along with our message title today. So this is 2009. In my dream, I'm sitting in a deer stand. Early in the morning, sun's coming up. Now, for all you people out there, you're like, you go out there and shoot Bambi. No, that's not what it's about. I just love being in the woods. Like I've gone plenty of times, not seen anything, seen something, didn't shoot it. There's just something about being in God's creation that is just awesome. So I'm sitting, thank you. Yes, deer hunters. So I'm sitting in this tree stand, and I'm looking out over this field. And I see a deer step out, and I'm looking at the deer. I'm like, oh, that is a nice deer, right? I think I'm going to harvest that deer. So I start getting my gun up, and before I can get my gun up, somebody else shot the deer. And I was like, oh, man, I didn't know anybody else was here. So I'm looking around trying to figure out, like, who shot the deer. I hate that I must be hunting right on top of somebody, and I didn't know it. Well, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, comes like 15 or 20 people, this horde of people, and they all rush the deer. The dead deer on the ground, and they start literally like tearing it up right there. It's like they're starving, and they're all just like ripping it to pieces, and I'm like, whoa, what is going on? Like, what is happening right now? And then something catches my attention over here. I look to my right, and I'm looking at the trees, and they're kind of shaking and making a little bit of movement, and all of a sudden one of them disappears. Like a gigantic treetop, it literally looked like a giant reached in and grabbed it by the trunk and just snatched it out of the woods. And I'm like, that's weird. You don't see that every day. And then all the treetops started making a motion, and then they all start moving. All the treetops are moving. And I started freaking out. Because you ever pull into a parking spot at the grocery store, and right as you're slowing down and stopping, the car next to you starts backing out? And you in your head know you're not moving, but you think you're moving. You're stomping on your brake, and you're not moving. It's the person behind you. They're backing out. It looks like you're moving. I'm watching these treetops are all moving in the same direction. I'm like, well, that's strange. So I get out of the tree stand. I walk over to the road, and literally everything on that side of the dirt road is just going, and it's starting to go faster, and it's starting to go faster. And I look down, and the earth literally breaks apart right there. It splits apart, and then it starts to separate. That side of the earth starts lifting and separating and spinning. And it's going, and it's getting bigger and bigger, and it's going higher to the point to where now I start seeing the different layers beneath the earth's crust, all the way down to molten lava. So I'm looking at all these layers. Now we're at the molten lava. It's slinging, it's spinning around. All of a sudden, it starts slinging out lava balls. Lava balls start shooting out in the sky, and I'm like, man, this is crazy. Like I'm watching this, I'm like, this is just the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. And then it hits me. Okay, if I'm here and lava balls are slinging out into space there and the whole earth just split apart, then somewhere else the same thing is happening and those lava balls are probably heading my way. I turn around and sure enough, up in the sky, here comes these lava balls. And they're starting to come down. So now I'm getting a little bit like, okay, I might need to be careful where I'm standing right now. So I back up a little bit and one's coming right for me and I realize, well, I can't run fast enough. But then all of a sudden I'm like, you know what? You don't see lava balls every day. This might be pretty cool. So the lava ball comes down, literally crashes right next to me and starts rolling. And it didn't break apart and it didn't blow apart. And it's got like a little crust on the outside, but I can still see molten lava on the inside. I'm looking at it and I'm going, oh my gosh, this is absolutely amazing. I've never seen anything like this. I was like, man, I might ought to go home and check on the wife and kids. This is probably not a good situation. So I'm driving home and it's just absolute chaos. And I get to my house and it is sheer terror. People are running and screaming. There's fire, there's smoke. People are absolutely going out of their minds. And I find my wife and she's with my daughter and she goes, where's Matthew? I said, I thought Matthew was with you. She goes, no, he's not here. You got to go find him. So I said, okay. So I start walking. And as I'm walking, the ground is literally splitting apart all around me. But everywhere I put my foot, it solidifies and it's solid. And in the midst of all this, I am just like I am right now. Totally calm, totally at peace. And then I woke up. End of the dream. I know you're like, man, where's this going? That's it. End of the dream. But it's a great setup for today's message, which is called Out of This World Peace. Out of This World Peace. So my goal for today is that wherever your peace is, by the time you leave here, it'll be a little bit better. Let's just do this real quick. Everybody close your eyes for a moment. And I want you to just sort of get in touch with where is your peace right now. If peace on the inside of you, if there was a needle, just like on your gas tank on the car, and there's a full and there's an empty, take just a moment and register, where is your peace? Get a good visual of it. Okay, now you can open your eyes. Now you've got that. My goal is we're going to move that needle, okay? My goal is I want to see your peace increase. So everybody say this, I need my peace to increase. Good, awesome, I love that. That's what we're going to do today. I was reading this book, and a guy had an excellent quote in there that I love. I've used it a few times, and it's just so good. His name is John Burke. The name of the book is Imagine Heaven, and this is the quote. We live between a muted taste of heaven and a merciful taste of hell for a time. I think that's what makes life so hard for us. We know we can get in the Bible and read in the Bible, and we can read about heaven and God's grace and His love and His mercy and His good plans for us, plans to prosper us, plans not to harm us. We can do all that, but yet we're still encountering our everyday life. And we're still encountering situations and circumstances that don't seem or appear on the surface to line up with what we're reading in God's Word. And I think for most of us, it's like the reason I love the muted taste of heaven and the merciful taste of hell is the image I get is it's like we're squinting through life. You ever squinted because you couldn't quite make something out? I think that's the way most of us go through our whole life. It's like we're squinting our way through life. Like, does that make sense? Does that line up with God's will for my life? Like, it's like we have this permanent squint on our face because we just can't make sense of it all. And so as I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about this whole topic of peace, I wanted to make that the message title today because for me personally, lately in the past couple of months, my peace level has gone up. But just like in that story, how many of you know that dream that I had, there was nothing peaceful about that at all. It was the exact opposite. It could not have been any more chaotic. But yet I was at total peace. Now that's a dream. Okay, that wasn't me in real life. But I would love to be that way in real life. And as I started thinking about that, I thought about Jesus when He was talking to His disciples. And this is the night before He's going to be crucified. And so we've got several chapters. If you're familiar with what red letters mean in the Bible, red means, oh, these are the words that Jesus spoke. So on the night before He was crucified, we've got chapters of him downloading to the disciples, trying to prepare them for what was coming because he knew what was coming. How many of y'all would love for Jesus just to come sit in your house and give you a heads up for the next year? Here's what's coming for the next year. This is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. You know, boom, 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 boom. That's what he's doing with the disciples right here. And you and I get the privilege of reading about it. So let me read the first 3 verses of John chapter 14. Jesus says, don't let your hearts be troubled. We could stop right there and just talk about the fact that we choose to let our hearts be troubled. Because he's clearly telling them, don't let your heart be troubled. So by virtue of what he's saying, there's a choice there. He says, trust in God, trust also in me. There's more than enough room in my Father's home. If this were not so, would I have told you that I'm going to go prepare a place for you. And when everything is ready, I will come and get you so that you will always be with me where I am. In heaven is what he's talking about. Now, I read that same exact passage about a month ago. This one, you know your vacation's good. I knew I was going to get to this point, and I was like, when was that? A couple weeks ago I talked about it? No, it was a month ago, like literally 30 days ago. But I was using that verse in context of the rapture in heaven and Christ's plan for us, because that scripture right there, I'm going to heaven to prepare a place for you, lines right up. If you were Jewish, if you were one of these Jewish men in that room, you would know exactly what Jesus was talking about, because he was talking about the ancient Jewish ceremony, which went like this. When a man and a woman fell in love and mutually they decided they wanted to get married, the steps were very clear. Step 1, the groom goes to pay the price for the bride. He goes to the father and he pays the price for the bride. This isn't mail order, okay? She's on board with it. She loves him. She wants to get married. But he goes, he says, this is my offer, my price that I would like to pay for your daughter's hand in marriage. That's what Christ did for you and I. Christ left heaven. He left the Father. He came down and paid the price for the bride. That's us. Now, in the Jewish ceremony, what happened next was he's paid the price. She now belongs to him. Nothing can change that. Legally, in the Jewish ceremony, legally, she now belongs to him. We hadn't even had a wedding ceremony yet. Legally, she is his. But now he's leaving because he's going to go back to his Father's home and prepare a place for them to live. So that's what Jesus is saying. He said, I'm going to go right now. I'm leaving, but I have to go because I got to go prepare a place for you and I to live together forever. Now, he's been preparing that place for us for a couple of thousand years. Took him 7 days to create the earth. He's been working on our home for a couple of thousand years. And so in the ancient Jewish marriage, she knew that he was leaving, but she knew he was coming back. So she's ready. At any minute he's going to come back. She didn't know when, but she was always looking. She was always ready. It's the same way for us. We know that Christ is coming back to get us. He's going to come back for us one day. So we're always ready. We're always waiting. We're always prepared. And then the groom would come, usually in the middle of the night with a big fanfare, all of his buddies, lots of instruments, singing, shouting, waking up the whole town because he wanted everybody to know, I'm getting my bride tonight. It is going down tonight. And he would come and get his bride. Then they would go have the marriage ceremony. It's an exact duplicate of what Christ did for us. So this is what he's telling those guys. But now we skip ahead several verses to verse 27, and he says this to them. I am leaving you with a gift, peace of mind and heart. And the peace I give is a gift the world cannot give. So don't be troubled or afraid. Again, he's saying you can choose not to be troubled or afraid. But I love that he said this is a gift that the world can't give. In other words, he's saying you cannot find peace in this world. You can look as far as you want, as long as you want, as hard as you want. There is no peace in this. You can have peacefulness here and there. You can have pockets of peace. You can have time when, hey, it's not so bad and things are going pretty good. That's different than a gift of peace that is eternal that Christ gives you, that you have now peace of mind and heart. We've done way too many funerals at this church in the last month, a lot of funerals. And part of every one of those funeral services has been the fact of distinguishing how we as believers mourn. Because yes, we mourn. Loss is loss. And we mourn the loss of our loved ones. But the Bible is very clear when it says we don't mourn like people who don't have hope. Because yes, we mourn, yes, we miss them, we love them, we wish they weren't gone, but we have hope because as believers we know we're going to see them again. And not just see them again like for a moment, like for all of eternity. We're going to spend eternity together. Doug and I, the worship leader this weekend, we were talking before service, and one of the funerals we recently had was for Daryl Smith. Many of you might know him. He played drums on a worship team. And Daryl passed away way too young and lost his battle with cancer. But we were just sort of talking about this whole idea of eternity. And Doug said, you know what? That's just like Daryl to hurry up and run and get there ahead of everybody else. I said, yeah, man. I said, he got the Disney Fast Pass. I mean, boom, he's there. He's having the time of his life, like he's experiencing life like he's never experienced it before. That's the faith and the hope that we have as believers. Now, it doesn't change the fact that you're now here and that person is not, and now you've got to figure out how to navigate your life without them. But can you imagine doing that, but nowhere in your mind is there ever going to be a reunion? Can you imagine doing that, and when you breathe your last breath, that's just it? You're just gone? There is nothing else? That's hopeless. But that's not what we have. We have a hope. As a matter of fact, according to our hope, this world isn't even real. The real world is the world that we're going to. Let me read you John 16:33. Jesus is wrapping it up now. He has told them a lot, several chapters, trying to prepare them because their whole world, just like in my dream, their whole world is about to be absolutely obliterated and blown apart. And Jesus says, I have told you all of this so that you may have peace in me. Here on earth, you will have many trials and sorrows, but take heart because I have overcome the world. I mean, just look at that dichotomy right there. He clearly says here on this earth, you're going to have trials and sorrows. That's a guarantee. Guaranteed. I don't care if you believe or not, whether you're a Christian or not, it doesn't matter. We all live in the same world. We're all going to experience trials. We're all going to experience sorrows. But he says, but I am giving you peace. That's why I told you all of this ahead of time. Because if you know this, if you get this in you, then even when you're facing those situations and circumstances that you don't want to go into, that you wish you weren't involved in, there's still a way that you can have peace in your heart. So I think part of what started this whole thing stirring in me. So by the way, this isn't really a message if you want to know. This is kind of like more of a personal testimony. I would love to tell you that I'm building to a point and it's going to fix the whole thing. I'm not. So I'll let you know that ahead of time. But I am building to a step that you can take that I'm going to guarantee you change your life. So it'll be on you. If you want to do it, fine, but you don't have to. You just keep living your life as usual, or you can have life change that lasts forever. This is your story. What do you want to do? So I got a hold of these books. One of them was Imagine Heaven by John Burke. The other one's Imagine the God of Heaven. We've got a slide. I'll put that up in a little bit. But I got very interested in this book, and I don't even know how I found it, to be honest with you, but John Burke was a pastor, used to be a pastor, he's retired now. He's got a pretty cool story. Like, he was an atheist. He was a pastor's son. His dad is in the hospital dying, and he's just this very analytical engineer type, completely does not believe in God at all. But somebody comes to his father's hospital room and leaves a book, and the book was about somebody who had died and gone to heaven and came back, so he read that book. Now, he didn't get saved right then, but that book did something in him. Like, it challenged his engineering brain. Like, there was enough in there that it really got him thinking about his own personal belief system and was he really right? And that launched him on this journey to getting saved. And he did get saved, and then he became a pastor. He started a huge church out in Texas. He's since retired from that. But he never lost his fascination for what's called an NDE, a near-death experience. And so he always was fascinated with people who died and like experienced something and then came back. So Imagine Heaven is him interviewing hundreds of people who had those experiences. Now, these are people, he purposefully went after people who did not make any profit. Like, most of them, he had to do a lot of detective work to find them because they didn't tell people their stories. Most of them were doctors and lawyers, people in high enough professional places that they were scared if somebody found out about their story, they'd think they were weird. And they might possibly even lose their career over it. So he sought these people out. And the reason he called it Imagine Heaven was because he said, when you hear all the different experiences, all of them have very similar experiences when it comes to encountering God and encountering Christ. But the difference is how they see heaven. And he explained it this way, which I thought was brilliant. He said, it'd be like if I loaded up 50 people in an airplane and flew them from the West Coast to the East Coast across the United States, and they all randomly jumped out at different places, parachuted out, and then I went back and asked them, tell me, what does the United States look like? He said, well, the person who parachutes out in Montana is going to have a much different picture than the person who parachuted out in Maine or Nebraska or Louisiana. And as you hear all these people, you start getting this picture of what it looks like. That's why he did Imagine Heaven. But a side effect of that, when he did that book, was something really began to challenge a lot of the belief systems in his mind, to where he began to realize that maybe his picture of God was too small. And it was that challenge to him personally that prompted his second book, which is Imagine the God of Heaven. Now, in Imagine the God of Heaven, he's talking about these near-death experiences and the effect that it has on people. And I want to read to you one of the things he says, because he's talking about, hey, here's some things that are common among all the people. And he cites this. One of the things that is common to all of them is they have life change. So this is a section of the book. Numerous studies have followed the after effects of an NDE. Again, that's a near-death experience. If an NDE is not a real experience of a life to come, why would it change people's lives and perspectives so drastically? In the Dutch study of 344 cardiac arrest patients, the experiences of a control group who did not report NDEs were compared to those who did report NDEs. Researchers interviewed all 344 patients 2 years after their cardiac experience, and then again 8 years later. So 2 years, then 8 years. This is what they found. This is a direct quote from their report and their findings. We were surprised to find that the processes of transformation that had begun in people with NDE after 2 years had clearly intensified after 8 years. That is fascinating, because a lot of times people will change for a moment, but this is having a lasting effect. The people who had experienced an NDE during their cardiac arrest continued to be clearly different. These are not Christians writing this, by the way. In particular, they were less afraid of death and had a stronger belief in an afterlife. We saw in them a greater interest in spirituality and questions about the purpose of life, as well as a greater acceptance of and love for oneself and others. Likewise, they displayed a greater appreciation of ordinary things, whereas their interest in possessions and power had decreased. It is quite remarkable to see a cardiac arrest lasting just a few minutes give rise to such a lifelong process of transformation. Now, for those of you that have been a part of Cathedral for a long time, you're familiar with the name Bobby Brunson. Bobby Brunson is a member of our congregation, one of the founding couples that started this church. Our church started in their living room, Bobby and Kay Brunson. This whole thing started in their living room. Well, back in the 70s, Bobby was struck by lightning, was dead for 26 minutes. Legally dead, and he came back to life. Now, that was an experience, obviously, that changed his life. But if you know Bobby, you know his one all catchphrase saying that he says about his life now back here on earth, and that is, don't sweat the small stuff. I mean, the man doesn't get worked up. He doesn't get worked up. He doesn't get upset. He doesn't get worried. He doesn't get anxious. Nothing phases him. I mean, he is just, no matter what happens, if you go to him, he'd be like, man, just don't sweat the small stuff. Like, this ain't even real. Like, what's waiting for you on the other side when you get, like, you're not even going to have a memory of this whatsoever. And he's just had this experience that literally changed his life. And I think it goes to exactly what these people are talking about. And when you read these near-death experiences, I want to share with you just a couple of things of what they do and what they don't experience. The main thing they all experience is a love they can't explain. They say when you stand in the presence of God, imagine a moment in your life when you felt more loved than you have ever felt in your entire life. Multiply that times 1,000,000 and you're not even close. You're still nowhere near. The amount of love that you feel coming off of God, they all experience love, and they all say the same thing. You're alive when you're there. There's literally one person who was dying of cancer. They died. They didn't know in the exact moment they were dead. They literally stood up and said, I'm healed. I'm healed. God healed me. Well, no, they were dead. But they felt more alive than they had ever felt in their life. You know what none of them experience? None of them experience any guilt, any shame. None of them experience any anger coming from God, because a lot of them see like their whole life just in an instance. And they say, man, I saw stuff I wish I didn't have to be standing in the presence of God when I saw, but they all say the same thing. But God, there was nothing coming from God of anger or guilt or shame. You know why? Because all of God's anger and guilt, all of that happened on the cross. The cross of Christ means nothing if now when you stand in the presence of God, you feel guilt and shame. If that's the case, then God's a liar. Because God said all the punishment of all the sins of all the world was exacted on Christ on the cross. So that now you and I can stand in His presence absolutely unashamed. Does it mean you don't do bad things? No. Does it mean you're not? No, it doesn't mean any of that. It just means that that's how much God loves you. And that love goes so far beyond anything you could ever think or imagine. This is what I got to thinking. So I told you the dream. And I kind of, sometimes I get in that whole storyteller mode. And I like doing that. But as I was working on this, I thought, what about the engineering types? What about like people that are just more logically minded? And this is sort of what popped into my head. Is not all of life just solving math problems? I mean, isn't that the case? There's a reason we call math equations math problems. Thank you, math teacher. Yeah, there's a reason they call it, because it's a problem, right? And the problem is we don't know the answer and we need to find an answer. So let's just take variable equations for it. Let's take 2x plus y equals 32. Okay. All right, Destiny. Now we're speaking your love language right there. Now, before you ask, I don't know what the answer is. Feel free to write it, take it home, solve it, send it to me later. That's fantastic. My point in this whole thing is that is a variable equation. Every variable equation has two components, a variable and a constant. So let me give you the difference between the variables and the constants. Constants do not change their value as the problem is solved. Variables change their value depending on the problem. Constants represent the known value in the problem. Variables represent unknown values. Constants have fixed face values. Variables do not have fixed face values. So in other words, you can solve any math problem if you know the constants. Now for you and I, this is the constant. This is the truth, and it doesn't change. It never has changed. It never will change. And we need to know that, because that is what helps us solve all the world's problems. You know what happens when man gets involved? When man tries to come up with truth, then you end up taking 2 sexes and making it 35. That's what happens when we do it. Now, that's not a slam. Let me just tell you, if you're in here and that's part of your deal and you're navigating your way through that, hear me say this, man, God loves you as much as He loves me. 100%. And He's got an awesome plan for my life, and He's got an awesome plan for your life. But what I'm trying to do is challenge our way of thinking. I recently watched a video, and I love this video because the video was a blood witch, a new moon, new age worshiper, and a guy who was LGBTQ and just recently came out. He's 28 years old, a pastor's son, fully LGBTQ, all the way to the trans part, and now has gotten saved, has a relationship with God. Here's what I loved about those three people. They are on fire for God. On fire for God. And it really challenged my heart, because you know what I heard all of them say in their personal testimony? You know what drew them to those things? You know what drew the blood witch to the witchcraft, to the new age, the crystals and the Reiki and all that, and the guy to the LGBTQ? All of them said the same thing. Man, I was just searching for some peace. Because I didn't have any peace in my life, and I knew there had to be something out there that could give me peace. And now they've all found it. And you know what's exciting about that? You know the people that they're going to reach are the LGBTQ and the witchcraft and the new age. Those are going to be the people that they're going to reach, because they've been there and they understand them and they know why they're doing what they're doing. They're not looking at their behavior. They're not put off by what they're doing. They realize, man, that's just somebody who's searching. They've got a huge hole in their heart and they're just trying something to fill it. One of the stories that John Burke tells, and I can't remember if it's in the book or he did an interview with Sean Ryan, and it might have been in an interview, but one of the guys he talked to was a guy who was involved in the Mexican drug cartel, and he overdosed on cocaine. Well, when he died, he said everything just went black. And he said, I couldn't see anything, not even a hand in front of my face, but he said, somehow I could tell I was falling, like I was going down. And I didn't understand what was happening, and somehow I just realized I'm going to hell. And he said, but I don't believe in hell. And he said, when he had the thought, I don't believe in hell, he said, I started going faster. He said, then just out of nowhere in my mind, this voice just called out and said, cry out to God. And he said, my response was, I don't believe in God. He started going faster. And then he said, if there is a hell, I don't deserve to go to hell. And he started going faster, so much so he got so scared, he finally cried out and said, God save me. And he said, I stopped. And he said, all of a sudden, I started going back up. He goes all the way back up, and this man, dead, has an encounter with Jesus Christ that radically changed his life, and now he's an on-fire, born-again Christian. Yeah. Now, that's a good end of the story, but how many of you right now are wrestling with in your head, but wait a minute, no, he was in the drug cartel. He overdosed on cocaine. He didn't know Jesus. That don't happen. It doesn't happen if your picture of God is too small. If you don't understand a father who says he loves you more than your children, if you're in here and you got children, you know, what wouldn't you do to save your children? You would go to the absolute ends of the earth, you would give them the absolute every possible opportunity and make sure they didn't miss it at all. When God says it's his will that none should perish, when he says as much as you love your children, I love you infinitely more above and beyond what you can love your own children. That's a loving God. That's a loving Father. But we put so much stress on ourselves. We have so much worry. We have so much anxiety that we're not happy with our own relationship with God. And in our misery, we make other people miserable. And then maybe sometimes we say, man, I'm bad, but that guy's worse. Holy cow. And I think what happens when you hear these experiences, I can't tell you how many people in these books get saved in their near-death experience. Now that messes with your head. You're like, Betty, I thought like when you die, that's it. Well, maybe it's not. Maybe there is another opportunity. Maybe there's another chance. I don't know. All I'm just saying is you need to find out for yourself. I want to read you a couple of scriptures out of Colossians. The first one is in Colossians chapter 1. Paul is describing who Jesus is. Listen to these verses. Christ is the visible image of the invisible God. He existed before anything was created and is supreme over all creation. For through him, God created everything in the heavenly realms and on earth. He made the things we can see and the things we can't see, such as thrones we can't see, kingdoms that we can't see, rulers that we can't see, and authorities that we can't see. And he backs it up by saying, in the unseen world. Everything was created through him and for him. He existed before anything else, and he holds all of creation together. Christ is also the head of the church, which is his body. He is the beginning, supreme over all who rise from the dead. So he is first in everything. For God in all his fullness was pleased to live in Christ. And through him, God reconciled everything to himself. He made peace. He made peace with everything in heaven and on earth by means of Christ's blood on the cross. Now, the man who wrote that, Paul, had a unique perspective. You know why? Because he had a near-death experience. Paul was stoned and died and was drugged outside of the gates and just left on the roadside. And a group of believers gathered around him and he came back to life. Radically changed his life. And because of that, he goes on to say this in chapter 3. Since you have been raised to new life with Christ, set your sights on the realities of heaven, where Christ sits in the place of honor at God's right hand. Think about the things of heaven, not the things of earth, for you died to this life, and your real life is hidden with Christ in God. And then he goes on to wrap it up. Verse 12. Since God chose you to be the holy people he loves, You must clothe yourselves with tender-hearted mercy, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Make allowance for each other's faults and forgive anyone who offends you. Remember, the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. And above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds us all together in perfect harmony. And let the peace that comes from Christ rule in your hearts. For as members of one body, you are called to live in peace and always be thankful. It's all about peace. And there's a way that you and I can have a supernatural peace. Remember, Jesus said, I give you a gift. That gift is peace of mind and peace of heart. And it's not natural because nothing in this natural world can bring you peace. But it's supernatural because it's outside of time and space. It's outside of anything you can do, but I offer it to you freely. And there's a way that you can go through hell on earth and yet have my complete and total peace in your heart as you walk through it. I was trying to think about what personally happened in me as I read these books, and I think John Burke himself does a good job of explaining it. Let me read you this quote he puts at the end of Imagine a God of Heaven. What if God wants far more for us than we can imagine? Maybe God wants us to be more carefree, trusting, playful, unburdened, like his little children living on earth inside a bigger kingdom perspective. Yes, we must work, be responsible, deal with life's challenges, but in the end, joy, laughter, and playfulness will endure eternally. What if God wants to teach us to live with more of heaven's joy coming to earth through us right now? So this is my challenge to you. Because I know when you talk about something like this, I honestly can't tell you how to get peace in your situation. Because A, I don't know you personally. B, I don't know your situation. There's so many different ways. Maybe you need peace about where your children are with God. Maybe you need peace about somebody that you've already lost and you're just not sure what to do with that loss and that pain. Maybe you need peace with your own self. Maybe you're just not one of these people that says, oh, I know I'm going saved and I know I'm going to. Maybe you're just not there. You know, one of the things that I can't stand is when people, there's a verse in the Bible, and maybe you're familiar with it, with the sheep and the goats, and the famous thing is, many will cry out to me and say, because God is separating them out because he never knew them. They're saying, oh, God, didn't we, heal people in your name and cast out demons in your name? He's like, I never knew you. And people use that verse to create confusion and doubt. Would you ever do that with your own children? Would you, if you're parents in here, would you ever want your children walking around not knowing whether or not you truly love them? Would you ever want them to walk around having a doubt in their mind? Like, would you say, you know what, I'm going to create a little bit of doubt just to keep them on their toes? I want them to doubt whether or not I really love them so that they'll work really hard to make sure that I do. No, you wouldn't do that. If you would, I got a therapist you could see. No, you wouldn't do that. So I can't tell you how to get peace in your situation, but this is what I could do, something I've never, ever done in my whole life. I'm going to give you a 100% guarantee. A 100% guarantee that your peace can increase. Super easy. 3 books. Get these 3 books, read them. Imagine Heaven, John Burke. Imagine the God of Heaven, John Burke. When Lightning Strikes, One Man's Journey to Heaven and Back, Bobby and Kay Brunson. You read those 3 books, and I don't care where you're at, and I don't care what you're going through. I promise you with 100% guarantee, your peace is going to increase. And if it doesn't, you can see Luke Turner because he's going to make it right if it doesn't work. Jen, would you hand me those books right there? So I want to help you out. So I know it's 3 books, right? 3 books can be kind of pricey. So I'm gonna help some of you get a little head start on it. Right there, this young lady in the second row. I'm going to give you Bobby Brown. Would you pass this to that young lady right behind you right there? Thank you so much. No, young lady. Yeah, that's you. That's you, right? Yeah, there you go. That's right. That's right. Somebody over here, Who was I? Young lady right there in the striped shirt, right there. Yes. Yep. You. Would you hand this book to her, please? I want y'all to read these books. You're not allowed to sell them. I'm going to be checking Facebook Marketplace to make sure that they don't get sold. Imagine a God of heaven. Here you go. That's all you. Read it, live it, be a part of it. I got one more. Bobby and Kay. But who doesn't know Bobby and Kay's story? Who does not know Bobby and Kay Brunson's story, the man that died? You don't know Bobby and Kay? Oh, you need it, man. You need it right there. And the cool thing is, after you read that, then you can find him and he'll sign it for you. All right, everybody stand up with me. I told you, not really a message. It really is just, I just wanted to point you in a direction. But I'm telling you, there's not a doubt in my mind. Well, Eddie, we're supposed to read the Bible. 100% you are. And I'm going to tell you right now, nothing in those books contradicts this word. Nothing. But I will tell you this. When you read those books, it's going to challenge you. It's going to challenge you on just how big your God is with his Father's heart. And that's a good thing. That's a very good thing, because I'm going to tell you, wherever you're at, wherever you have unrest, when you read these experiences, when you read what happens, you're going to find a peace and a rest for your soul that you can't possibly get any other way. So everybody repeat this after me. Jesus Christ has given me a gift, peace of mind and peace of heart. It's supernatural. I can't get it in this world. This world has nothing to offer. It can't give me any peace. But with Jesus' peace, I can make it through anything. There you go. You just blessed yourself. Great job. Because you guys are the ones now that here's what I love. You think about that blood witch. You think about that guy that's coming out of the LGBTQ community. You think about that girl who was steeped in the new moon worship, new age stuff, all of that. I love that God specifically went out and grabbed those, just that one person that can now go back into that community and tell their story and change countless lives. And that's you. I don't know where you're at, but you got people around you that need to hear what God's done in your life. And you can make the same difference in them, and you can have the same life impact and do it all while having the absolute peace of God in your heart. Bless you guys. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week for Uncommon Sense.